doing this. Okay, so today we are going to discuss the LM part, the LM curve, and we are going to start off with the transaction demand for money. Okay. 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 Now, the starting point of the Keynesian theory is that every individual has a wealth which is given by W, and this wealth is held in two forms. One is money, and the other is what right now we say that they are non-money assets. Now, then the question comes, what is money? Now, can you define money?
Medium of exchange.
Yeah, money is a matter of functions for a medium, a measure, a functions, a store. So it is a any what it is any generally accepted medium of exchange. Now, uh, we can think of, when we're talking about money, we have two components of money. One is money demand, and the other is money supply. Now, money supply is controlled by what is called the central bank of every country. Now, in India, we had a bank which was actually called the central bank, but this is not what we mean in this context. In India, it is the Reserve Bank, which is the central bank. So, the central bank is the bank, the head of the monetary authority. So, it is the bank which con- controls and or determines money supply. Okay. Now, the Central Bank of India defines money in the following ways. We have M1. M1 is the, as you know, the currency with the public, plus it is the demand deposits with the banking system. Do you know what is demand deposits? I think some of you will be able to answer this.
So the fixed deposits, the savings deposits, all of that.
No, demand deposits is you make a deposit, but you can demand it at any point of time. So it is the savings deposit. What you are calling uh, fixed deposits are called time deposits. These deposits are made for a certain period of time, and you're not supposed to withdraw it before this time period elapses. Of course, there are emergencies. the exigencies, and you are allowed to withdraw, but at a cost. So, what is the main difference between M1 and M2? In in M2, you're also including the savings deposits with the post office. So, as you know, that in India, post offices, in fact, in many countries, UK also, post offices are allowed to function as a bank. So, they can accept savings deposits, open fixed deposits, and so on. So, M1 and M2, this is currency and demand deposits or savings deposit. In M3, we include time deposits with a banking system. And again, M3 and M4, it just depends upon whether the post office banks are included or not. Now, the post office also issues something which is called National Savings Certificates, NSCs. These are basically tax saving bonds issued, I think, let's see, I don't remember the term. Uh, so these are, in one way, these are types of banks. So the interest rate is you have to keep them for 5 years, and let's see, where is it? Yeah. So the investment tenure is 5 years, and the rate of interest is 6.8% per annum. In addition to NSC, you also have Kishan Vikas KVP, Kishan Vikas Patra, which is for 124 years, and the interest rate is 6.9. Okay. So you can see that M1 and M3, these are the two main types. M1, M2 are almost similar. M3, M4 are almost similar.
Sir, in
Okay.
M3, is it M2 plus time deposits? Because
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I made a mistake over here. Yes. No, 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 no. Sorry, sorry. No, no. This is M1 plus time deposits. So M1 and M3 excludes the post office. Okay. And M2 and M4 includes the post office. So when we are saying all deposits, it means both the savings deposits, which comes in M2, also the time deposits with the postal banks. Is it clear?
yes, sir.
Okay. So anyway, so in India we have uh, four definitions. In fact, there's another definition called the high powered money. But let us focus on M1. M1 or M2. There's not much difference between them. Okay. So for the time being, we are ignoring the fixed deposits with the banks and post offices. So if you focus on M1, let us say, then we can write wealth is equal to, in fact, it is not equal to, uh, let's see if I can do this just once. It's an identity. Sorry, let's see if I can copy paste. Yeah, I can. So these are identities. So that means it is not a question of equilibrium. It is always true. So if you have 1000 rupees as your wealth, you have to keep part of it as money and the rest in non-monetary assets. Okay. Now, if you look at what is the difference between M1 and non-money assets, money is a liquid asset used to undertake transactions. Okay. So whether you have money with yourself or you have money in your savings account, it is always available for you to undertake transactions. See, if you have cash money, you can always go to the shop and buy. If the money is in the savings account, then also it's pretty liquid. You just have to go to an ATM nowadays, or if the shop has a point of sale, you can just use your debit card. So, money is a liquid asset, and the purpose of holding it is to undertake transactions. Now, apart from this, if you hold money in the form of cash, do you earn anything?
No, sir.
So there's no interest earning on money.
Sir, if prices are changing, we lose also.
Yeah, we can lose also. Now, in the case of non-money assets, we can think of different types of assets. You can invest your wealth in the form of uh, real estate. You can also invest it in the form of non-monetary financial assets. Now, when Keynes talked about non-money asset, he basically meant bonds. Now, if you compare bonds with money, what are the differences between the two?
Bonds earn interest.
Okay,
Sir, not liquid.
bonds earn interest and money is liquid while bonds are not. Okay, now you can argue that if you look at M1, M1 is cash at hand and it also includes the savings account. Now you earn money on savings, don't you? But if you think about it, if you account for inflation, then I mean, as it is, the interest rate is very low, about 3%, 4%. And if you account for interest rate, possibly the interest on savings account is not positive, zero, or even negative because you're losing money. As price levels are falling, the real value of the monetary asset, money asset, is falling. So, for that reason, we assume that money does not earn any interest. So, zero earning, bonds earn some interest. And second is that money is a liquid asset, whereas bonds are not liquid. If you want to uh, convert bonds to a liquid asset, there's a lengthy process. You have to find someone, you have to find a buyer, then you have to sell the thing to him. You can't sell it to him directly. You have to go through a broker. So there's a brokerage fee and so on. Please hold on for a minute, please. Yeah. So there's a lengthy process and also costs of conversion. Sorry, just you have to give me 10-15 minutes, please. It's 5:50 by my watch. I'll come back after 6. Okay, sorry everyone. Mm, okay, so uh, this wealth can we can now write wealth in this form. Your wealth is identical to M1, which is money, and bonds. You have two sources of wealth, and you have to keep এটা একটু এখানে রেখে দাও এখানে you have two sources of wealth and এখানে নাম্বারটা আছে you have to keep money either in the form of bonds or in the form of money. Now suppose your wealth is 1000 and you're holding, let us say, 400 as money. Then it's very easy to find out bonds. Bonds will be simply 600 W minus M1. So that means if you know what is happening in the money market, you also know your demand for bonds. For some reason, suppose you're trying to, so this is in a stock situation. Now, suppose for some reason you want to increase your holding of money. So, right now you're holding 400 in the form of money and you want to increase it to, let us say, 700. So, you have excess demand for money. Once you attain equilibrium, once the adjustment process is over, you will find that M1 has gone up, but at the same time, your holding of bond 2 has to fall. If your demand for money goes up, if you have excess demand for money, then you have to reduce your bond holding. There has to be excess supply of bonds. Okay. So, in other words, what we are seeing is the bond market is a mirror image of the money market.
So could you repeat the justification once?
Sorry, just give me 2 minutes. না 7 আচ্ছা দাঁড়াও এটাই হবে এটাই হবে না তাহলে তো আমি শুনতে পাইনি একবার একটু পরে 15 মিনিট পরে ফোন করে জেনে নিতে পারো 15 মিনিট পরে ফোন করে জেনে নিতে এখানে পাঠিয়ে দাও এই নাম্বারে হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ করে দিয়ে একবার একটু কনফার্ম ঠিক আছে সরি জাস্ট গিভ মি 1 sec. I mean, what is the bond market? What is the okay? Okay. See, if it is an identity, it means that M1 plus B is always equal to your wealth. That is, your stock of money and your stock of bonds is equal to uh, stock of wealth. Okay. In fact, what I'll do is let me cut it out and show it separately. Okay.
স্যার একবার মানির স্লাইডটা দেখাবেন?
Yeah.
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার। থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার।
And minute okay. Okay. So given this equation, given that W1 is okay. So if you have this identity, then a person who is happy with his bond holdings is also happy with his money holdings. Okay. Since you have just two assets, it means that your wealth has to be divided between bond and money. So it's not how much money or how much bond you're holding. Okay. It simply means the important parameter over here is the division ratio. I want to keep 40% as money. I want to keep 60% as money. If I know this ratio, then I also know the ratio or the amount of bond holding that I want. So both are determined simultaneously. Is this part clear? Given that it's an identity, if you once you decide on the money holding, it also means that you're deciding on the bond holding. So if you're happy with your bond holding, you're also happy with your money holding and vice versa. That is, if you're happy with your money holding, you're also happy with your bond holding. Now, suppose you want to, the person wants to increase, sorry, money holding. So that means in the money market, he has excess demand for money, right? If he wants to increase money holding, then this implies that he simultaneously wants to reduce bond holding, right? So this implies in the bond market, it was equilibrium. Now people want to hold, the demand for bond has gone down. So what do you have? You have excess supply in the bond market. So similarly, if we have excess supply in the money market, right? So what is the meaning of excess supply in the money market? Do you want to increase your stock of money? No, you want to reduce the stock of money. So if you want to reduce stock of money, that means you want to increase bond holding. So that means demand for bonds has gone up. So you have excess demand for bonds. So is it clear? You have excess demand for money. Here you have excess supply of money. So if you have excess demand for money, it means you have excess supply in the bond market. And here you have excess supply, excess demand in the bond market. So for this reason, we say that bond market is mirror image of money market. So Kritika, is it clear now?
So I asked Upanita.
Oh, sorry, your Upanita. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes,
Upanita,
sir.
is it clear?
Yes, sir, it is clear.
Yeah. Okay. So therefore, what happens is, uh, if you know what is happening in the money market, then you also know what is happening in the bond market. For this reason, when we have to decide on which market to drop, it is Keynes suggested or Keynes argued that we should drop the bond market. Okay, so for this reason, the ISLM model looks at goods market, which is captured in the IS curve. It looks at the money market, which is captured as you will see in the LM curve, and the bonds market, which is dropped. Okay. Now we have to find out two things. What is the money demand and what is the money supply? So let's look at the money supply first. See, the money supply is determined by the central bank. The central bank can control the amount of money in the economy through the following methods. There are some other methods also, but we are not considering that. Uh, See, what we have is we have the central bank and then we have the scheduled commercial banks under the central banks. And obviously, we have the public. So the public keeps money, deposits with these scheduled commercial banks. Okay. Now, let us suppose that the general public makes a deposit of rupees 100. Okay. Now, out of this rupees 100, the bank has to keep uh, a certain amount as in the form of liquid assets. So this asset is kept with itself. So that means if you deposit 100 rupees, maybe it keeps 10 rupees with itself. Then let us say it's 10. Another part is kept, this is also liquid, it is kept with the central bank as liquid asset or in the liquid form. Let us say this is 5. So this is called cash reserve ratio and this is called statutory liquid ratio. So if you have 100 rupees, 10 rupees is kept with the bank, 5 rupees is kept with the central bank, and the remaining 85.
Sir, sorry to interrupt, but the part they keep with the central bank, it's called CRR now, and the
Yes.
assets which
Yes.
they
Sorry,
maintain with itself is called SLR.
statutory liquid ratio. Okay, I mean, okay, I think you'll be correct. But anyway, part of it has to be kept with itself, and part of it has to be kept with the central bank. So this cash reserve ratio and statutory liquid ratio, once we deduct this, we get the amount which can be invested in different projects. Okay, so this is released into the money, into the uh, economic system, and results in the creation of money. So I think again over here, there's a multiplier system. So it works something like this, that you go to a bank and you deposit 100. Out of this 100, 15, let us make it 10, 10. Okay. It will be easier for us. So 20% is kept either as cash reserve or as SLR, and 80 is goes out as credit. Now this is goes to bank B. So what happens is, out of this 80 rupees, 20%, which is 16, is your cash reserve ratio and SLR, and 74 is the credit created money. So bank C, this is again 74 is kept, out of which you have CRR and SLR of how much? 7.4. So it will be 14, 14.8, and credit is, let us say 15. 14 is 60, 50. I think it will be 49.2. So you can see that out of this 100 rupees, you have got 80, you have got 74, you have got 49.2. So the credit creation, the amount created at every step is decreasing, but it is going on. So there is also a multiplier process over here in the process of credit creation. Now suppose the bank, the total credit created is therefore 80 plus 74 plus 40. Now suppose the central bank decides to increase either the cash reserve ratio or the SLR. So instead of 20, they now have to keep, let us say, 30%. Or let us say the central bank wants to increase the money supply. So they reduce SLR on cash reserve ratio. And they make it now, instead of 20, it is now 5% each. So that means the total is 10%. So now what is the flow? 100 from here, 10% goes out. So you have got 90. Then out of this 90, 9 will go out. So I've got 81. Out of this 81, how much is it? 10%? 8. 72.9, something like this. So if you compare with this amount, instead of 80, you're now creating 90. Instead of 74, you're creating 81. Instead of 49, you're creating 72. So the total credit creation increases if you increase either SLR or CRR. Okay, and similarly, you can do the opposite. If you sorry, এটা তো আমি decrease করলাম. If you increase SLR or CRR, then the credit creation will go down. Open market operations. So what are open market operations?
Buying and selling of bonds, securities.
Yeah. So what happens if the central bank buys bonds?
Money supply is increased.
Money supply.
If it buys bonds, then
Decrease. Money supply
money flows.
decreased.
Money flows from the Reserve Bank to the public. You are selling the bond to the central bank. So the central bank pays you the money. So the stock of money with the public increases. And similarly, if you decide to sell bonds, then if you say, we are taking away money from the public. It is going outside of circulation. So the money supply will decrease. Next is policy rates. So you have different types, and basically
So,
they refer.
so
Yeah,
I have a doubt. So in the previous slide, so when the SLR was increased to 10%, the credit it was decreasing, or it was increasing.
no, it was decreasing. Initially I said that it was the bank is increasing SLR. Then I realized it would be difficult to make the calculations, so I decreased it.
Okay. So then there's an inverse relation between SLR, CRR, and credit creation.
See, SLR, CRR are basically same, right? One is with the bank itself, other is with the central bank. Yeah, you have a inverse relation.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Acha. In case of the policy rate, this is basically the banks borrow from the central bank. They can be of different periods. For instance, the repo rate is very short run. The bank rate is somewhat longer. And again, what happens is if the bank rates, repo rates are increased, then the central bank is basically introducing a contractionary policy. If the central bank increases these rates, then it will be passed on by the commercial banks to the public. So that means in each project, whenever you borrow from the central commercial banks, you have to pay a higher rate of interest. So that means the stock of money available with the public, with the investors, is decreasing. Okay, so in this way, the central bank controls the money supply in the economy. Now, for our purpose, we take this assumption, we make a very simplifying assumption that the money supply is constant. So that means the money supply can be modeled in this way. This is the rate of interest, and this is money supply or money demand. This is money supply, and this is defined as M by P. M is the total supply of money, M1 you can assume, and P is the price level. Uh, Sometimes what we do is we can also write MS, and we write it in this form. So this is one way of writing it. The alternate way is this. As you can see, both are the same. Okay. Okay. So is there any question about money supply?
So,
So
what
yeah,
will be on the x-axis? Like, I
I've
didn't
written
get.
MS money supply. Actually, it is MS or MD.
Okay, and sir, the graph is also measuring MS.
Yeah, in this case, there's no money demand. So I've just written MS. So this is the MS in the economy. It is constant. Whatever the rate of interest, it doesn't change.
Sir, why measure in real terms?
Uh, I'll come to this question a little bit later. I mean, one reason is that, um, I mean, this will not satisfy you, but when we are talking about the money demand, price has to be brought into the picture. Okay?
So to see the inflation.
No, no, you'll see soon. I mean, if I try explaining now, it's going to get very confusing. I mean, I have to backtrack. You'll just see when I start money demand, you'll just see. So at this moment, just assume that it is like this. So at any point of time, you have a certain amount of money supply, and we can also think that over time, the money supply can change. So the money supply can be like this, it can be like this. So if you're moving from here to here, you have contract expansionary policy, and when you're moving from here to here, you have a contractionary policy. Okay, so you expand, you have a fixed supply of money at a particular point of time, and but the Reserve Bank has the option, as you will see later on, of increasing or decreasing the money supply. Okay, okay. So at any point of time, the money supply MS is supposed to be constant. But it is controlled by the central bank and can be increased or decreased to change either the rate of interest or stimulate the economy. Okay. So if you want to expand income, you can also always change the money supply. Now let us come to the money demand. Now, money demand is has three components. Transactions demand, precautionary demand, and liquidity demand. So there are some models about these money demand functions, which will be covered in the future semesters. You've got the Baumol's model, transaction demand. You've got the Tobin model, which looks at liquidity demand, and so on. So you'll understand the details. The details will be covered in the future semesters. But right now, let me very briefly explain what is transaction demand. Now, remember the definition of money. Why do we require money?
Sir, liquid.
Money is used to
Transactions.
undertake transactions. So, let us say that when you return home at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month, you have got, let us say, 1000 rupees. And you have to decide how to keep this, how to allot this 1000 rupees as either money or as bonds. Now, if you know that you're going to buy, uh, you need some medicine, you need to buy some food, you have to pay the electricity bill. Okay, so you have to undertake certain transactions. In that case, you require, let us say, X amount to undertake the transactions. Right? See, remember that you can do two things. You can either keep the money with you, or you can simply invest it in the bonds. Right? So you can either hoard the money, in which case there's no interest, or invest it in bonds. Now, uh, typically what happens is the transactions are staggered. They are staggered over the month. Do you understand this statement? What what I'm meaning by staggered over the month?
So dispersed
Yes,
means
sir.
every transaction does not take place at a day.
Yeah. So for convenience, let us assume that you have to pay the same amount every time you undertake a transaction. So that means it will be T1 after, let us say, 10 days or 5 days, it will be T2. After a certain period, it will be T3 and so on. So ideally, what you can do is you can invest the entire money in bonds, and then as soon as you require the money, you withdraw T1. Okay, you require T1 first. After 2 3 days, you go and withdraw T2. Then again after some time, you go and withdraw T3. The problem over here is that you have transaction costs. See, going to the stock market, I mean, clearing, selling the bonds involves time. So you have time, or one can say you have an opportunity cost. Next is you also have brokerage costs. So when you're going to the bond market, you generally don't sell the bonds yourself. You're such a small seller, no one will buy from you or no one will sell it to you. So you have to typically go to the market through a broker, and he's going to charge you costs. You can think of other costs, the traveling cost and so on. Okay. So you have a time cost, you have a transport cost, brokerage costs, and so on. So all these are transaction costs, cost necessary to buy or sell bonds. So it's true that if you invest in bonds, you're going to earn some money. But at the same time, if you have to go to the every day, you have to go to the bond market and sell part of your bonds, it's going to be very irritating. So what happens is you find out how much money you require and you hoard this. What you can do is that, see, every day you won't go to the market, but what you can do is that for the first 15 days, or let us say for the first 10 days, you know that I want 20,000 rupees. Then, so what happens is as soon as you get your money, you will keep 20,000 with you, and then you will invest the rest in bonds. Okay. Then after, let us say after the second 10 days, you again require, let us say, 15,000 rupees. And in the last 10 days of the month, you require 6,000 rupees. So what you can do is, suppose your income is, let us say, 50,000 rupees. You can invest it in this way. You can hoard 20,000, and you can invest the remaining amount, remaining 30,000, in bonds. Acha. After 10 days, you sell 15,000, and then after another 10 days, you can sell 6,000 of bonds. So you have a staggered flow. Every day you require some money. So you have to arrive at some sort of a compromise, some sort of a balance. You don't invest the entire amount in bonds. That will make it very difficult. You have to go to the bond market every day. The transaction cost will go up. At the same time, you require a total of how much? 35, 41. You don't keep the entire 41,000 with you. You keep part of it, and you sell off your bonds periodically. Okay, so there's some sort of a balance. Now the question is, uh, what are the factors which will see the amount that you're keeping to meet transactions is called transaction demand.
So could you explain the compromise part once more? Like after selling,
Okay,
uh,
let me just finish writing this. The amount of money that you, yeah, see, you have got two extremes. One is that you invest the entire amount. You have got 50,000 as your income, and this entire amount is invested, right? What are the advantages of this? What are the disadvantages? See, the advantage of keeping this is if you invest the entire amount and periodically you withdraw the money as soon as you have to pay someone, the advantage is that you earn, you maximize your interest earnings. Okay. So balance on one side is maximization of interest earnings. Okay. But what is the flip side? The flip side is your transaction cost is going to go up. Every day you have to undertake some transaction, and you have to go to the market and sell exactly that amount. So today maybe you require just 500. So you have to go to the bank, incur a huge amount of transaction costs, and sell just to get 500. Is it really worthwhile? Okay. So on the other hand, if you keep the entire money with you, you hoard it. The advantage is you don't have to undertake any transaction cost. Whenever you require money, you just dip it into your pocket and pay the person. But you're losing the interest. You could have earned something which you're losing, right? So what we do is we achieve some sort of a balance between the two. We make an estimate of the amount of money that you feel is necessary to meet transactions, right? Plus you keep part of it because you can have some emergency unforeseen transactions. Okay. So you expect that you're going to require, let us say 20,000. So you keep 20,000 plus there may be an emergency. So you keep 5,000 with you and the remaining part is can be invested. Is this clear? Now, what does transaction cost, what does transaction demand depend upon? If obviously it depends on the amount of money or the volume of transactions, right? So if you expect a huge amount of money, you require that you have to pay 5,000, you will keep a low amount with you. If you expect to pay a huge amount, then you are going to keep hold a large amount of your wealth in the form of cash. So the volume of transactions is an important determinant of uh, sorry of your transaction demand. And now, how do you capture the volume of transactions? Generally, if income goes up, if income increases, then one may expect that the volume of transaction will also go up. Okay, so that means your transaction demand is proportional to income. We can also say the same thing for precautionary demand. So, transaction demand and precautionary demand can be written in this form. Now, K into Y, right? So that means it will be a certain proportion of the production. What? How did this happen? So that means if your income is, let us say, Y, you expect the transactions that you will undertake to be a certain constant proportion of the income. If your income doubles, then and the value of K is, let us say, half, then you will require double of what you required before. Let us say K is 0.5. So if your income is 100, you expect 50 rupees to be the transaction. When your income goes up to 200, K is still 0.5, you expect 100 rupees as the transactions. Now, apart from income, price also plays a role, isn't it? If the price level increases, you'll require more money. So it should not be Y, it should actually be KPY, right? And I think you asked this question that why do we keep it in the nominal form, money supply. So what is
Yes.
happening is if I write it in this form, it means I've written it like this. Money supply is equal to P into MD, right? And what I can do is I can simply divide both sides by P. See, what you do is not really relevant. Both are going to give you the same thing. One reason why we keep it like this is just convenience. In our case, price is constant. Since money supply also is constant, if we just keep ms by p, it means that we have a constant theta equal to md, when md can change with y on and r. Okay, so this form is convenient. You have all the constant parameters on one side. Here you have, as you'll see, I've introduced y only, but you will see r will also come into the picture. Okay, so transaction demand is KPY, or rather we can say K1PY. Precautionary demand is also, let us say, K2 into PY. What we generally do is we combine transaction and precautionary demand. We don't write precautionary demand, we just write transaction demand, and this includes precautionary demand also. Okay, so when I'm saying that transaction demand is increasing or transaction demand is decreasing, it actually means transaction and precautionary demand is changing. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So, for the disadvantage, basically the disadvantage is like in hoarding money, we are not being we don't have to incur the transport cost, the brokerage cost, the
Yeah,
opportunity cost. Okay.
that's the advantage. If you hoard it in the form of money, you're not incurring these expenditure, but you're losing your interest income.
Sir, in the diagram where it is given MS equals to M by P, here the M is money demand.
না না না, এটা হচ্ছে তোমার মানি সাপ্লাই, এম ইজ মানি সাপ্লাই, এটা হচ্ছে স্টক অফ মানি। This is simply
So,
stock of money. I have not brought money demand so far into the picture.
sir, I couldn't
এক মিনিট,
understand how.
দাঁড়া, এই স্লাইডটা করে নিলে হয়তো ক্লিয়ার হবে। ও আচ্ছা, তুমি এইটের সঙ্গে বলছো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, আমি গ্রাফের ব্যাপারটা বলছিলাম।
না না, সেটা না, এই জায়গাটার কথা বলছো তো?
হ্যাঁ 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 স্যার, এখানে তো আমরা দেখেছি পি এম এস ইকুয়ালস টু পি ইন্টু এম ডি, তাহলে গ্রাফে কেন করা এম এস ইকুয়ালস টু এম
না
বাই
না,
পি?
আমি গ্রাফে যখন করছি না, M is the stock of money supply.
ওকে।
ঠিক আছে? আচ্ছা, তারপরে এইটা আমি আলাদা করে বলছি। এখানে আমি বলছিলাম যে আমরা অনেক সময় এম বাই পি ইজ ইকুয়াল টু এমডি করি, আবার অনেক সময় এটাকে পি ইন্টু এমডি করি। ঠিক আছে, মানে ধরো এটা হচ্ছে মানি সাপ্লাই, আমি জাস্ট ট্রানজাকশন ডিমান্ড নিয়ে আসি, আমি কে ওয়াই বলেও লিখতে পারি, আবার দিস ইকুয়াল টু কেপি ওয়াই। এইটা হচ্ছে তোমার সাপ্লাই, এইটা হচ্ছে ডিমান্ড। পিটাকে আমি কোনখানে নিয়ে আসবো, এই পিটাকে আমি নামিয়েও দিতে পারি, I can divide by p.
Okay, sir.
So generally we use this form. ঠিক আছে, সেই কারণে আমি লিখেছি ms equal to m by p। ঠিক আছে, এই ফর্মুলেশনটা আমরা এখানে লিখছি।
Yes, sir.
If you want you can write this as আচ্ছা।
স্যার স্যার প্রিভিয়াস স্লাইডে একটা লিকুইডিটি ডিমান্ডও ছিল, হোয়াট ওয়াজ দ্যাট?
আমি ওটা এখনো এক্সপ্লেন করিনি। Let me just tidy up everything. আচ্ছা, okay. Now as I've told you that money demand has actually three components. We have looked at the first two components, which are precautionary demand and speculative, transaction demand and precautionary demand. Now let us consider the third component, which is speculative demand, or it is also called liquidity preference. Okay. Okay. Now remember that what we discussed in the last class, bonds. When you invest in bonds, you can how can you earn by investing in bonds? What is the returns from investing in bonds?
Interest.
The rate of interest, sir.
Interest.
Yes. One is the rate of interest, which is R. So when you buy a bond, you have a coupon rate of interest, and for the as long as you hold the bond, you get this coupon rate of interest, right? At the same time, suppose you have purchased the bond at 100 rupees and you sell the bond for, let us say, 150 rupees, right? In that case, you have capital gains. So this is profit made while selling bonds. Okay. Now, this interest rate is the coupon rate, right? So you know when you're buying the bond certificate will say that you're going to get so much rupees. They will specify 10%, 15%, 6%, whatever, but you know that okay, the face value is so much. So the interest rate, coupon rate based on the face value. Now, you know, you may have purchased the bond not at the face value. You may have purchased the bond not at the face value, but at a higher value. So instead of buying it at 100 rupees, you had brought the money bond for 200 rupees. Okay. The interest rate is 10%. So how much interest are you getting? What is your effective interest rate? So let us say face value is 100, coupon rate is let us say 10%, and bond price is 200. What is the effective rate of interest? Prithviraj,
Yes, sir.
তোমার what is the effective rate of interest?
Sir, 110.
It is 110 after 1 year.
Why? After 1 year now, what is the rate of interest? This is, remember, this is a perpetual bond. We are talking about consoles. So that means every year you're going to get 10% interest. Okay. But what is this 10% on?
Sir, face value.
It is calculated on the face value. The coupon rate and face value
5%.
is written in the, yeah, exactly. So the coupon rate and face value is written in the bond certificate. The problem is you have purchased the bond for 200. Okay. So what the company will say, the face value is 100 and 10% means how much? 10 rupees. But how much have you invested? 200. So this means the rate of interest, effective rate of interest is only 5%. Okay. So your face value and the effective rate of interest can vary. But when you're purchasing the bond, right, is there any uncertainty about the interest rate?
Sir, if the bond price changes, then it will change.
বন্ড প্রাইসটা যদি চেঞ্জ করে, তুমি কি বন্ডটাকে bond how does it when does it affect you? When you're selling or buying the bond, বন্ডটা তো তুমি কিনে নিয়েছো, ঠিক আছে? তুমি ধরো 200 টাকায় বন্ড কিনেছো, এইবারে পৃথ্বীরাজের কাছে কিছু বন্ড ছিল, সে অয়নকে বিক্রি করছে। Will it affect you?
No, sir.
এটা অয়নকে এফেক্ট করবে। He is buying the bond, but you are not going to be affected. So the coupon rate and effective rate may differ, but there is no uncertainty over the interest rate at which you will earn. Right? You are always going to get 10 rupees, right? Unless you buy or sell the bonds, you're going to get 10 rupees. There's no uncertainty over there. Now, let us say that I had purchased the bond for 100 rupees when it was issued. I'm selling it to you for 200. Okay. So, what is happening over here? I have made a profit while selling bonds because price has increased. So, my profit is, or capital gains. How much is my capital gains? 100 rupees. Okay. Now, the question is that in this case, the rate of interest had fallen. That is why the bond price had gone up. So, why did I earn capital gains? Because interest rate fell and bond price rose. Okay. But is it necessary that the interest rate will fall? Is it possible that interest rate can also rise? That is also possible. So suppose interest rate rises. So now whatever bonds are issued, they are being issued at the rate of 20%. So new bonds are being issued at 20% interest. Okay. What will happen to bond price? Will anyone want to buy from me? Because my bond will give you just 10%. But if you buy a new bond, then you're going to get 20% interest, right? So no one will want to buy from me. In that case, how can I sell the bond? Suppose I lower the bond price. I lower it to rupees 50, right? So suppose you buy the bond from me. If you're buying the bond from me, remember how much interest are you getting? The interest amount,
10.
interest amount is coupon rate and face value. So this is rupees 10. So what is the effective rate? You have
20.
purchased the bond. Yeah, you're getting an interest of 10 by investing 50. So the effective rate of interest is 20%. Okay. Acha. Now, what is important over here is bond price is has gone down. So I had purchased the bond for 100 rupees, but I'm selling it at 50 rupees. This means that I am incurring capital loss, right?
Sir, I have a question here. Sir, why will I choose to sell here? Means why we are
I mean, need
basically,
the money. I mean, need the money.
sir.
That is one reason. Yes.
But this can be thought as that my wealth has decreased. Means earlier my wealth was with the capital gain. Now the capital gain has reduced. Means without participating in buying and selling, also my wealth has reduced.
Yeah, in that sense, yeah. Yes, you can think in that way. Your notional wealth has changed, even if you don't participate. But let us say that you want to, you require some money. There's a medical emergency in your family, and you need to, you need some money urgently. So even though the bond price has fallen and you are incurring capital loss, you will still sell it off. I mean, you can't wait till the bond price has gone up and then sell it, right? Okay.
So, sir,
Now, yeah,
so
follow
sir,
on.
all my decisions would be on the basis of the effective rate only.
What type of decisions?
Whether I will sell the bond or whether I will buy or keep it.
See, partly yes. As uh, I'm coming to that issue, that why will you say, do this? Um, okay. See, one reason is that there's a medical emergency. Okay. The other reason is, suppose bond prices go up. Okay. What will you do? Will you invest in bonds? Forget about interest rate. Focus on capital gain, capital loss. Suppose you expect price to go up continuously. Will you buy the bond?
Yes, sir.
Suppose you expect you purchase some bonds and you expect bond prices to fall. What will you do?
I will sell the bond as soon as possible.
You will sell the bond as soon as possible. But it's now 7 o'clock, so bond markets has closed. And you can't sell it. Anyway, I was joking. Okay, so partly one is emergency. The other is that there's a problem. You expect prices to change. But do you know for 100% that bond prices will rise or bond prices will fall?
No, sir.
See, if you buy a bond, if you buy this bond, is there any uncertainty over your interest earnings? I'm talking about the absolute amount. What you'll get at the end of the year. Will that change?
No, sir.
Your effective rate may change, but your effective rate may change, but not your interest earnings. But when you're talking about capital gain or loss, then you have uncertainty. See, I mean, the stock market has risen to, when the stock market rose to crossed 50,000, some people were expecting that there would be a crash. But in reality, what did we see? There was a small crash, but then stock markets recovered and they went up to 51,000. The Sensex has increased to 51,000. So we may
Sir,
expect,
then in such
yes,
a case, when the prices are falling,
hmm,
it is basically like the choice, like of the person, whether he wants to sell or he wants to keep it. sorry, whether he wants to buy or wants to keep it when the prices of the bonds are falling.
No, in both cases, in both cases, it depends whether you buy bonds or whether you sell bonds depends upon your choice, and your choice will be determined by your expectations. So suppose you expect a bullish run, you expect that bond prices are going to go up in the next 4 5 months. What will you do?
So, being an ordinary person, I would want to sell off, but a bull would definitely buy, take risks.
No, why will you sell off? You're expecting that price will go up. So you should, in fact, try to buy as much as possible. Now,
Okay,
let
now I will
prices go
buy
up.
it. Yes, sir. But now I
Let
will buy
prices
it.
go up even further.
Yes,
Let
sir.
prices go up further. See, the face value is 100, the current price is 200, but you expect it to go up to, let us say, 250. You should buy the bonds. Buy the bonds and sell it round 250. What happens when the bond prices are going down? You're going to suffer losses. You feel that they're going to go down even more. So there's no, unless you hold on to a really long period till there's a revival, you should sell off the bonds. Okay, so over here, the decision to buy or sell bonds depends upon your expectations. Okay, so basically, what I'm saying is that if you hold money, what is your return? Your return is zero, but if you hold bonds, you will get interest, and then let's see, I want this. আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে এখানে আমি একে করে নিচ্ছি Let's, you will get interest, but and either a capital gain or a capital loss. If it is a capital gain, your interest or your return is even higher. But if you have a capital loss, your interest, your earnings will go down, and it may even become negative. Okay. So if there's a gain, your earnings rises, but if there's a loss, your earnings falls, may become, depending on how much loss you have, may even become negative. Okay, is it clear? So you're not sure what will happen. So part of your wealth is kept to meet transaction and precautionary demand. You will not invest the entire amount in bonds because of this risk of capital loss. Because there's a speculation involved in investing in bonds, you will also keep part of your money with you. You're too afraid. You don't need it, but you feel that if you invest it, you're going to lose your money. Am I clear? So, part of your wealth is kept to meet transactions. If the rest is invested in bonds, he becomes exposed to risk. There's a fear of capital loss. As a result of this, the person will not invest W minus transaction demand and precautionary demand in bonds, but will hold on to part of it. So that means if your wealth is 1000, you require 200, let us say 400 for your transactions need. The remaining 600 can be invested in bonds. But in that case, there's a risk that you may lose the entire 600 or even a part of it. So we generally don't invest the entire 600 but hold on to part of it. This part that is retained and not invested in bonds is called the liquidity demand. I'll come to it later on and I'll explain how it relates to what are the factors which determines it. But so far, do you understand what I've said? Or are you too tired? Think.
Yes, sir, understood.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'll close at this point. You had a long day. In the next part, see what I've done is I've related the precautionary demand to capital gains. Okay, so what I've said is it depends upon what I'm expecting, whether I expect bond price to or whether I expect bond price to fall. But remember, I have to relate this to rate of interest. Okay, because bond price is not a variable in the ISLM model. So I have to bring interest rate into the picture. This is one. Secondly, I have to create a money demand function. So this is going to be what I'm going to do in the on Tuesday.
Sir, could you tell us some references as to where to study this from?
I've taught this from Freud.
Sir, from chapter
Pages,
5.
I don't know whether it's chapter 5. I think it's chapter 3. I'll wait a minute, please. The Keynesian system, money, interest, and income. Yeah, chapter 5. So I've taught page 78 and 70, page 78 to 80. Okay. 10th edition, Freud,
78 to
78
80.
to 80.
Okay.
80 just a top part.